After days of investigation, sources said police have finally found the head of model Abby Choi, whose corpse was dismembered with some parts of her body still missing.
Hong Kong may have a long history of organized crime, but modern-day Hong Kong has one of the lowest murder rates on Earth. The murder rate in Hong Kong is between 0.2 and 0.9 per 100,000 people, whereas the United States murder rate sits between 4.4 and 6.5 per 100,000 people each year. The last time Hong Kong witnessed a brutal murder was in 2013, and it was the case of a young man who killed his parents and hid their heads in the refrigerator. Since then, there haven't been any murders that have dominated the headlines the way the gruesome murder of Abby Choi has. In February, Abby Choi was declared missing, only to be found 3 days later in a boiling pot of soup. In the past few weeks, the authorities have uncovered a lot about her murder, the major suspects, their motives, and how they carried out their plan. In today's video, I will be talking about a murder case that has shocked all of Hong Kong and the world. Abby Choi Tin Fung was born on the 11th of July, 1994, as the eldest of 3 daughters. Lucky for Abby, she was born into wealth, as at the time of her birth, her family owned numerous construction companies across Hong Kong and China. Her mother is also said to own multi-million-dollar assets and properties. Considering just how wealthy her family is, it shouldn't come as a surprise that Abby never had to endure suffering or pain. As she grew up, she quickly learned that her family's wealth was there to make her life comfortable. Aside from their obvious wealth, not much is known about Abby's family due to Chinese privacy laws and their choice to remain shrouded from the public eye. Despite her family's desire to thrive as unpopular members of Hong Kong's elite, Abby started a journey that brought her into the limelight when she was only 17 years old. In June 2012, Abby debuted as an Instagram influencer and began to upload pictures of designer handbags. With time, Abby started to post pictures of herself on her page, and from these pictures, it was easy to see that she was no stranger to the finer things of life. While no one knows if the fashion-loving teenager was posting pictures solely for fun or with the aim of being an influencer, the truth remains that Abby soon started gaining attention and followers. At the age of 18, Abby met and married Alex Kwong, a man she believed to be the love of her life. Together, the couple had 2 children, and the family of 4 stayed happy for a few years, but somewhere along the line, things changed, and the once happy couple decided to call it quits. Despite being a young adult, Abby was perceived as a fashion icon who loved to mix and match outfits in a way that was unique to her. Soon, she started getting invites to exclusive and expensive parties and mixing with various famous celebrities. Having access to many star-studded personalities brought Abby more fame than she thought possible. Her Instagram followers increased with speed, so it was easy for her to transition into modeling and mainstream media. At the peak of her career, Choi was a regular attendee at Paris Fashion Week. She also worked for several famous magazines, including Vogue, Elle, and Harper's Bazaar. Till date, Abby's Instagram account is filled with pictures and videos of her that show she was living her best life and enjoying her work as a model. Less than 2 weeks before she was brutally murdered, L'Officiel Monaco featured Abby on the cover of their fashion and luxury lifestyle magazine. In her February 14th Instagram post, which was a picture of herself on the magazine cover, Abby wrote, "From Hong Kong to the cover of L'Officiel Monaco, my journey as a style icon continues. Grateful for this recognition and the continued support along the way." While this was a big moment for the influencer turned model, she had no idea that her life and career would be stolen from her a few days later by the man she once loved. In 2012, 18-year-old Abby Choi got married to Alex Kwong, who is roughly the same age as her. The couple were blessed with 2 children, who are now 10 and 8 years old, respectively. A few years down the line, the marriage hit the rocks and the couple divorced sometime before 2016. Abby moved on and started a relationship with Tom Chu Kwan, also known as Chris Tom, whose father is the founder of a very reputable chain of restaurants. Nevertheless, she remained in contact with the Kwongs. Although they were now separated, Abby shared 2 children with Alex, and since her kids spent a lot of time with their father and his family, the budding supermodel made it a habit to visit the Kwongs regularly with plenty of gifts. She cared deeply for her children and was willing to go to any lengths to make them comfortable. Just after the divorce, Choi bought a 4-bedroom luxury apartment for the Kwong family, and she clearly intended for her 2 children with Alex to live there when they weren't with her. The apartment was located in Kadoorie Hill, Hong Kong's most expensive neighborhood. Reports say Abby paid $67 million million Hong Kong dollars of her own money for the 4-bedroom home, but this purchase was made in the name of her former father-in-law, Kwong Kao, who was a retired police officer. Kwong received a medal for long service in 2001 and retired in 2005. According to some accounts, the once decorated officer was allegedly forced to resign from the force after he was accused of sexually assaulting a woman. Purchasing the apartment in Kao's name showed how much trust Abby had in him, but she also did it for financial reasons. It turns out that using his name for the purchase instead of hers saved her $1 million in stamp duty fees. For Abby, purchasing the apartment meant that her children and their father had a safe and luxurious place to live. But since the house was bought in Kao's name, he and his wife also moved in, which means that for the most part, the apartment was housing 3 generations of the Kwong family. According to several accounts, Abby Choi was a kind-hearted and loving person who made sure the people around her were doing fine. And of course, she extended this courtesy to the members of the Kwong family. Years before her divorce from Alex, her then brother-in-law Anthony was having trouble securing a job, so she hired him to be her personal chauffeur. At one point, she even co-owned a pancake stall with him. Whenever Anthony was not needed as Choi's driver, he would take the time to manage his pancake stall. He allegedly made a good amount of money from the stall and his job as a chauffeur, and it was all thanks to Abby. For the most part, Anthony was well aware of Choi's kindness towards him. In fact, he was somewhat grateful to her, and the two seemed to get along very well. Anthony also didn't shy away from letting the world know this, because his Instagram account is filled with friendly pictures of him and Abby. He even referred to her as Sis on her birthday. Abby's best friend, Bernard Chang, said Abby would sometimes go on vacation with the Kwong family, her children with Alex, her current husband, and the 2 children she had with him. While that may seem awkward to some, it didn't matter to Abby. All that mattered to her was that she was always there for her family, her children, and even her ex-husband's family. Luckily for her, her family life did not hamper her career and success. On Tuesday, the 21st of February, 2023, Abby Choi left home to pick up her daughter from school, as she usually did, but she never made it to the school. When Abby didn't show up after several hours, her daughter and teachers got worried. In a bid to find out what was going on, they called and texted her, but got no response. The lack of response stretched the already tense air to breaking point, because Abby was very attached to her phone. Due to the nature of her job, she spent a lot of time on social media, either making posts or taking pictures. So why wasn't she taking her calls or responding to texts? To make matters worse, there was no activity on all her social media handles, and that was very out of character for Abby. Finally, after 2 hours of not hearing from her, she was reported missing, and the authorities were quick to take action. Investigators found the first clue on the case that same afternoon. They reviewed footage from the security camera at her apartment complex. Abby had indeed left home that morning, and on the way out, she wore a white top, a white pair of trousers, white slippers, and carried a purple handbag. Ready to begin her day, Abby stepped into her 7-seater car, which was being driven by her chauffeur Anthony, her former brother-in-law. The authorities proceeded to interview Anthony and the entire Kwong family, but they all claimed they hadn't seen Abby since the day before. With the little information they had obtained, the authorities decided to check the GPS records of Abby's car. From the records, it was discovered that the car had been driven to Tai Po, a village 15 miles out of Hong Kong. The last location in the car's GPS records was very suspicious, so dozens of officers were sent to the area to investigate. Determined to find the missing socialite, officers went door to door interviewing people. They reviewed surveillance footage from local houses and collected dashcam videos from vehicles in the area. On Friday, February 24th, 72 hours after Choi disappeared, and 24 hours after the Tai Po village became a place of interest to the case, officers raided the ground floor apartment of a 3-story building. In the apartment, the police found Abby Choi in a state no one could have imagined. The apartment wasn't furnished and didn't look like anyone was living there. The bedrooms were empty and there was no sign of human presence, but officers soon found that the apartment was serving as a makeshift butcher shop. Inside the house, police found an electric saw, a meat grinder, 2 different types of choppers, a hammer, black raincoats, and face shields. The walls and floors of the main living area were all covered with tarp. Sitting among all this equipment was Abby Choi's purple handbag. Finding the purple handbag meant that the police were on the right track, so they kept looking. In no time, they found 2 dismembered human legs inside a refrigerator. They also found 2 pots full of soup that contained minced meat, carrots, and radishes boiling on the stove. A close look at the pot made investigators suspect that the meat in it was human flesh. When the soup was fully analyzed at a police facility, they found a human skull and several ribs. This, of course, confirmed their earlier suspicion. Abby had not only been killed, but parts of her body had also been made into some sort of human soup in what many have called a botched attempt at disposal. While inspecting the pot's contents, police noticed a big hole at the back of the skull, and investigators believed that the hole was caused by whatever was used to kill Abby. As soon as news about the gruesome murder of Abby got out, the whole country was filled with outrage, and speculations about who could have killed the 28-year-old began to fly around. Considering the fact that the suspects covered the walls of the flat with a sail and put on face shields and raincoats to avoid getting bloodstained by dismembering the body, it was quite obvious that this was a properly planned crime of passion, one that the killers had been gearing up for a long time. What could Abby Choi have done to deserve such a cruel fate, and who was the heartless person that did this to her? When DNA results confirmed that the contents of the pot in the Taipo apartment were indeed the parts of Abby Choi's body, authorities began to extensively look into camera footage from the neighboring houses. For a while, nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary, but the authorities soon noticed various members of the Kwong family behaving strangely and moving around in what some would call a suspicious manner. Deciding not to limit their search for the truth to video footage evidence, the police expanded their search and geared significant effort towards finding the other parts of Abby Choi's body. Over 100 police officers were dispatched to comb the grounds of Junk Bay Cemetery, a clifftop cemetery situated east of the city. Determined to carry out a thorough search, the Hong Kong police deployed divers from its elite unit Flying Tigers to search the water for Choi's missing body parts. Dog handlers were not left out of the search either. They scouted the cemetery and the forests around it, but they couldn't find anything. On the 25th of February, the day after authorities discovered the House of Horrors containing Abby's body parts and belongings, police arrested Anthony Kwong Kong Kit, his father Kwong Kao, and his mother Jenny Lee as suspects in the murder of Abby Choi. Alex Kwong Kong Chi, Abby's ex-husband, was also on the list of suspects to be taken into custody, but he had gone into hiding, and so a manhunt started immediately to find him. As soon as the news about the suspects got out, Choi's friend Pao Jo Yi offered a reward of 2 million Hong Kong dollars for information leading to Mr. Alex Kwong's arrest. A Taiwanese internet celebrity who goes by the name Doris added 1 million Hong Kong dollars to the reward, and Choi's husband, Chris Tam, also made a sizable contribution to the reward. After spending some time on the run, Alex Kwong was arrested near the international airport while trying to escape the city by speedboat, making him the fourth suspect to be arrested for the murder of Abby Choi. Reports say that at the time of his arrest, Alex Kwong was in possession of 500,000 Hong Kong dollars in cash and many luxury watches worth a total of 4 million Hong Kong dollars. Having rounded up the Kwong family, the police began to look into those around them, and that is how they found a 41-year-old yacht rental employee named Lam. Lam was arrested on suspicion of aiding Mr. Kwong's escape from the city. He had allegedly been paid 100,000 Hong Kong dollars for his services. The next person the authorities arrested in connection to Abby's murder was a 47-year-old woman known as Miss Ng. Local news say she is a masseuse who had been having an affair with Kwong Kao for about 6 months. Just before the crime was committed, Miss Ng started bragging to her co-workers that she had found a rich old man who wanted to take care of her. Her co-workers said she truly believed all her money troubles were over and was rarely showing up to work. Miss Ng was arrested for allegedly helping her boyfriend Kao to rent the apartment where the crime was perpetrated. She also helped Alex Kwong with another apartment in the city that served as a hideout for him. The last suspect in the case is Alex Kwong's friend, 29-year-old Irene Poon Hao Yun. She was arrested in Shenzhen, China, for abetting Kwong in his attempt to escape from Hong Kong. For the longest time, things seemed to be going smoothly between Abby and the Kwong family, but the once cordial and somewhat close-knit relationship began to turn sour last year when Abby decided she wanted to sell the Kadoorie Hill apartment. The Kwong family had been living rent-free in that apartment for over 6 years, and although she had been okay with the arrangement in the beginning, as Abby grew older, she began to feel as though the Kwong family were taking advantage of her. When Abby announced her plan to sell the apartment to the family, Kao, the family's patriarch, and her ex-father-in-law, immediately opposed her. Despite the fact that Abby promised to find them a new home, Cal wasn't having any of it. Notwithstanding, Abby was determined to go on with the sale, so she went ahead to consult a lawyer who told her that if she could prove that she paid for the property, she would be able to sell and receive the money for the apartment. After realizing that Abby was hell-bent on selling the apartment they had been living in for free, the Kwong became violent. Some reports even state that Kao allegedly threatened to kill Abby if she kicked him out of the house. Abby, in her kind nature, didn't think much about the threats. At the time, she had no idea that Kao and his family had every intention to make good on them. The entire Kwong family played roles in the abduction and eventual murder of Abby Choi, and they each had their own individual reasons. Before his arrest in February, Alex Kwong had been on the run for years because he was wanted for a series of scams he had engineered and engaged in. In 2015, Alex started an underground investment scam, and he somehow convinced 5 wealthy businessmen to invest 5 million Hong Kong dollars each into his venture. Instead of putting the money to good use in order to earn profits for his investors, Alex took off with it. That wasn't all. Alex was allegedly involved in robbery. He is said to have stolen necklaces, bracelets, 13 gold bars, 102 gold chains, and many more. Needless to say, Alex was in deep trouble. Trouble he believed only Abby's money could solve, and he wasn't the only one. Abby's chauffeur Anthony also had his issues. He was neck deep in debts. It didn't matter how much Abby tried to make his life better. Anthony kept falling into debt because he had a bad spending habit. He spent all his earnings trying to live a life of luxury that he simply couldn't afford. Eventually, the debts piled up so much that in 2019, his local bank sued him. Alex's mother, Jenny Lee, was also facing her own financial problems. A few years ago, she was declared bankrupt by the court, so although she played what some would call the least active role in Abby's murder, it's obvious that she also had a financial motive. While the Kwong family were drowning in financial problems, Abby Choi was getting richer. Her career was very successful and progressive to the point that she gained international recognition. Before she was killed, Abby had accumulated wealth of over 100 million Hong Kong dollars, which is equivalent to 12 million US dollars. She was the exact opposite of the Kwong family, so it's safe to assume that they started to feel jealous of her. Abby's decision to sell the house was simply the straw that broke the camel's back. According to the police, Kao and his sons, Alex and Anthony, paid for the apartment in Tai Po Village weeks before the incident. Once the house was theirs, they covered the walls and floor properly to avoid bloodstains. They also purchased all the equipment needed to butcher the body into pieces for easy disposal. Reports say that Abby's driver Anthony picked her up that afternoon and was supposed to drive her to her daughter, but instead of taking her to the school, Anthony drove to the entrance of Lion Rock Tunnel, where Alex was already waiting. Alex joined them in the car, and the trio drove to the apartment where they met Kao. The Kwongs had it all planned out. The only thing they didn't put into consideration was the fact that Abby Choi had become famous. A great number of people loved her, and the authorities were more than willing to swing into immediate action. The authorities swung into action at the first sign of foul play, so the Kwong family did not have the time to carry out their plan completely. On the 27th of February, 2023, the police charged Alex Kwong, his father, and his brother for murder. Kwong Kao's wife, Jenny Lee, was charged with perverting the course of justice because she had destroyed some evidence. In addition to the murder charge, Alex Kwong was also charged in court for the investment scam he carried out in 2015. The entire Kwong family were denied bail and were held in remand pending investigations. Their cases were adjourned to May 8, 2023. Miss Ng, Kao's mistress, is charged with abetting a murder suspect, but she is currently released on bail. 41-year-old Lam Shun, who was arrested for trying to help Alex Kwong escape, was charged with aiding and abetting Kwong, but he was granted bail. Irene Poon Hao Yin was charged on March 8th, but was later granted bail of 50,000 Hong Kong dollars. She was also given a travel ban to make sure she doesn't leave Hong Kong. A total of 7 people have been arrested as suspects in this case. According to the laws of Hong Kong, anyone convicted for murder is bound to a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment. Before 1993, the sole legal punishment for murder was death, but that rule was abolished. So now, judges can give life sentences to anyone who deserves it. Although trials have not been held, many are advocating for the Kwongs to receive life sentences for their gruesome crimes. The gruesomeness of Abby's death is heart-wrenching on its own, but the fact that she was killed by a family who she showed nothing but love makes it all the more tragic. Even in death, the people who knew Abby have had nothing but praises for her. When talking about his wife Abby, Chris said she was a kind-hearted and good person who always wanted to help others. She supported me and loved me very much. She also brought up 4 cute and obedient kids. It has been a blessing to be Abby's family or friend. Choi's friend Bernard Chang said, "I haven't imagined that a person who's so good, so full of love, so innocent, a person who doesn't do anything bad, will be killed like this. My heart is still heavy. I can't sleep well." Abby's friend Pao Jo Yi made a post about Abby on her Facebook page, and it read, "When Abby was alive, she was a very kind person and always wanted to help people. I feel anyone who had a chance to be her family or her friend are blessed." Abby was a kind-hearted soul who loved to help, and her good nature extended beyond humans. Abby loved humans, so she co-founded the Abby and Palmy's charitable organization, an animal rescue non-profit organization. The organization paid tribute to her on social media, saying, "You always helped animals, and you are a loving and kind person. Please rest in peace, and we will carry on your legacy." In loving memory of Abby, one member of the charity described an incident that proves that the late model and social media influencer was truly pure at heart. The person talked about how Abby had once saved a severely injured cat that had been hit by a car and was already attracting flies. Everyone thought all hope was lost for the cat, except Abby. She had hope, and that was how she saved the cat. Abby's father-in-law, Tam Chap Kwan, said she was a precious daughter and a responsible mother. Tam Chap Kwan's wife also agreed with her husband, saying Abby was always sure to bring meals to family gatherings and gifts to Mother's Day and birthday celebrations. She was also very friendly with the family's employees. Abby's mother has filed a court injunction against Kwang Kao to make sure he never sells the property linked to her daughter's murder and to seek a declaration that her daughter was the beneficiary owner of that apartment. A former Hong Kong police officer, Chris Emmett, told The Independent that Abby Choi's case reminded him of a spree of 1982 murders committed by taxi driver Lam Kor Wan, who was one of Hong Kong's few known serial killers. Lam Kor Wan usually covered his apartment in plastic sheets and used an electric saw to dismember his victims. Abby Choi's murder has shocked the world, to say the least, and her followers are devastated. In the last month, floods of tributes, compliments, and condolences have filled her Instagram page, and her follower count has increased massively. While Abby's page keeps receiving love from followers, Anthony Kwong's Instagram has been bombarded with insults and hate. People have made comments describing him as a demon, a psycho, and a cold-blooded person. Due to the nature of the case, many users on Chinese social media apps are comparing the Kwong family to the 2019 South Korean film Parasite. The movie portrays how a poor family slowly infiltrates the household of a rich family. The Kwong family is definitely a real-life parasite. They got their claws into Abby Choi's life. They kept feeding off of her without remorse, and when time came for them to be responsible themselves, they decided to finally kill her, the way parasites do. As a result of their heartlessness, Abby will never get to see her children grow up. She would never know how far her career would have taken her, and the world would not get to see more of her unique fashion sense. Her current husband, Chris Tom, has allegedly sworn to adopt Abby's children with her ex-husband and look after them like he were their own father. It's not often you find men as courageous as him, and many people respect him for it. Abby will be forever missed, but if it's any consolation, her legacy of kindness will live on forever.